What if your IT service desk helped you put your customers first? It can happen when it's powered by the world's most trusted cloud platform. Industry leaders BMC Software and Salesforce.com offer the fastest growing IT service management solution in the market today, RemedyForce. Let's meet Sally. Last week, Sally requested an iPhone by logging a ticket using the hashtag request capability, found exclusively in RemedyForce. IT got a request, and Sally got her iPhone. All was good until her mobile email stopped working. No worries. Sally jumps on to the RemedyForce self-service portal, and before submitting a service request, she checks out the articles section and quickly finds a possible solution to her problem by resetting her phone. Sally finds easy-to-follow, step-by-step instructions on how to remove and reinsert her SIM card. In this case, resetting her iPhone didn't work, so Sally decides to get help from IT. She gives them information about her problem and submits the service ticket. It's instantly routed to a service desk agent. Now, as an agent, you can start to get more information about Sally's problem. You can quickly tell if there's a problem on a larger scale. Right away, you notice there's planned maintenance. And diving deeper, you see there's a problem associated with the server and email on mobile devices. It also looks like someone has already issued a request for change, so you check out the latest status. Good news! There's a rollout plan, a backup plan, and information about who approved the change. It looks like Sally's email will be back up and running in no time. That makes Sally happy, and you a hero. Email is just one of the many critical business services your customers rely on. And with RemedyForce, you can monitor the status of any business or IT service at a glance. Deployment is fast and easy with no hardware or software to manage. Upgrades are automatic, so you'll always be on the newest version with the latest features. And RemedyForce is accessible to customers anywhere, anytime, on any device. Keep your employees happy and your business thriving. Try RemedyForce today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to where and all you are there across the world. First of all, let me welcome you to TFT14. I'm Suresh, GP, Global Delivery Leader for HP Professional Services, and I'm delighted to be here to present before you at TFT14. Today, I'm going to present a topic which I believe has got a lot more interest in today's growing best practice frameworks and standards. So today we're going to talk about best practice frameworks and standard adoption. I see a lot of people complicating of whether we need to go with ITIL, whether we need to go with Cobit or CMMI for services. So what we are going to see today is how to be pragmatic. So let's see how organizations can get the best out of what is existing. So we will focus with some pragmatic case studies to illustrate a simplified approach and method to fit which framework appropriately to the organizational environment. If you look at the business drivers, I think we are becoming more competitive, so the IT needs to deliver business value. There's been increasing pressure to reduce the IT expenditure year over year, which means that IT need to reduce costs, but also provide business value. As we see a lot of growth in terms of cyber security, bring your own devices, all kind of competitive advantages also comes with regulatory controls and compliances. These are going to be fundamental differentiators if you want to thrive or sustain your business. Of course, any business needs to thrive and improve, and customers are having multiple options today. They are able to go to different options. They have a pick and choose like never before. So one of the business drivers for every organization is to retain and increase the customer base, which is very difficult. And obviously, to sustain in this market, to develop competitive advantage. It's not only in terms of the service offerings that you give, but also in terms of providing value, providing a providing the entire roadmap for what the customer could actually get benefited. Now, having said all these things, one of the things which we all agree is this particular organization that is providing services are standard and certified with, let's say, ISO 20000 or ISO 27001 for information security, so that it gives the benchmarking to say that, yes, we comply with these standards and we are good to go. That gives the confidence to the customers. Now, if you look at today's challenge in what I've seen across different parts of the world, there is an increased amount of best practice frameworks, right? We have ITIL, we have Cobit, we have got CMMI for services, we have Six Sigma, Lean, and so on and so forth, and also standards which are aligning to IT service management and others like Cobit and others, right? So this creates a new set of challenges. Now, the challenges are, how do we create awareness of the business purpose and benefits of these practices? Now, I've been often asked of this question, how does ITIL really help to achieve business objectives? So how do you articulate it in a fashion that people are able to understand the real-time benefits of adopting these best practice frameworks? Now, when an organization tries to adopt a best practice framework, you need to also make sure that it is aligned and usable with your internal policies and procedures. As you know, each and every organization has got its own internal policies and procedures that needs to be aligned with what we are adopting. So it's very much important to make that alignment to fit into the organization. And of course, one size does not fit all. So it means that you need to tailor your best practice framework to suit to the specific organizational requirement. Now, this is some of the challenges that I see with the growth of best practice framework and standards. Now, I have a famous quote for Martin Luther King, which I always quote in my engagements. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Now, when you are looking at an opportunity to implement a best practice framework or a standard to be adopted, now what's happening is people just go all for it. They go for a big bang, they get overwhelmed. So just start small. Just make sure that you make a step movement so that you are in the direction of going forward. I think fundamentally organizations have to look at a structured, methodical approach towards any adoption of best practice framework. Now, let me give you a graphic, which is quite interesting. If you look at this graphic here, Edward Beer is coming downstairs now. It says bum, 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 it comes down and on. This guy that you see in the picture is Christopher Robin. As far as he knows, this is the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there's really another way if you could just stop bumping for a moment and think of it. Just think about this for a moment. How many of us just follow it just for the sake of following? We need to think, are we following it the right way? Are we doing this the right manner? So you need to think, stop for a moment, think as an organization, are we aligning the right way to adopt this? Is this best practice framework really suiting to our environment? Let's not follow the crowd. Let's understand our business objectives, our strategic goals, and then see which practice framework actually fits into the organizational need. Just a food for thought on that. Now, in the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to make a discussion on some of the best practice framework and standards, right? So if you look at this circle, it's kind of a PDCA, kind of a mode. You have ITIL, which is the adoptive framework for IT service management. We are running the version 3, which is 2011. On the green, you have Cobit, which is the business framework for governance and management of enterprise IT. Cobit 5 is getting increasingly popular because it appeals more to the business. ISO IC 20000, it's the standard for definitive standard for IT service management. We have 2011 version currently running. And if you look at ISO IC 20000, 2011, it's already open up for non-IT services as well. So if you are still a non-IT service company, you can still go for ISO IC 20000, which is good because it goes beyond the IT term towards service management. And of course, we have a lot more frameworks complementing each other like Six Sigma, Lean IT, CMMI for services, and so on and so forth. So there is no dearth of frameworks. Now, what we are going to do today is going to talk about how ITIL, Cobit, ISO 20000 all fit in together, and which is actually, how do we go about as an organization embarking on a journey towards best practice frameworks. So this is a snapshot that you see here to indicate about what's Cobit version 5 states, ITIL 2011 states, and ISO 20000. So from a scoping perspective, Cobit focuses on covering all IT areas, and ITIL 2011 is focusing on all IT services. And ISO 20000 2011 is focusing both on internal and external, right? So if you look at primarily the focus, Cobit is focused on IT governance, ITIL is focused on IT service management, and of course, ISO 20000 is a standard that certifies you that you're compliant with all the ITIL processes, the 14 processes that it comprises of, right? So we have two frameworks and standards. So there's a lot of things here, right? So you have number of process areas and so on and so forth. But it just gives you an overview of the framework and the standard in principle. If we do a mapping between ITIL and ISO IC 20000, the left-hand slide is basically, you're quite familiar of the life cycle, talking about the 5 core volumes and the underneath processes. And then the right-hand side is the service management system. So basically dividing into relationship processes, resolution processes, control, design and transition of new change services, and the overall service management system, right? So we're not going to deep dive into all these processes, but if you make the comparison, if you have a well-defined ITIL processes already in place, then you might look at certifying yourself to standard. Now, I've seen companies that just go around asking for, oh, okay, I want to get ISO IC 20000 because it's a bidding. I need to be competitive. They don't have underlying processes. So we need to understand that you need to have a foundation first ready before you actually embark on standards and compliance aspect. So if you look at the Cobit and ISO IC 20000, it's, again, if you look at it, you have Cobit as a governance layer sitting on top of all these stuff. So we have control processes, release process, relationship, service delivery process. Over and above, we have the Cobit framework, right? And in that way, it has to be complementing each other. It cannot be acting in silos, because at the end of the day, as an organization, you want to leverage maximum benefits of all the frameworks and standards that you've actually put into use. It not only requires investment, it requires cooperation, it requires processes, people, technology, and so on and so forth. So it's a big deal. So why wouldn't you take full advantage of it and give maximum business value to your customers? If you look at, again, with respect to CMMI for services and other stuff, you have the typical assessment cycles, right? So from a scale of 0 to 5 on the left-hand side, you have right from incomplete, ad hoc to optimizing. So you look at maturity assessment of all these processes, right? And make sure that every process is at what stage it is, right? And some processes might be at stage 3, which is defined. Some might be at optimizing. So you need to look at, okay, if I'm at stage 3, what level should I reach in the next 6 months' time and a year's time? So you need to be realistic, setting expectations of understanding your current state of assessment and where you want to go. So that's why it is very important to understand the overall objective of the company, of the organization, and then start looking at where you are and where you want to go. So it gives you an insight of where you need to place your coins appropriately before you make a decision. Now, let's step in before to give a practical insight of what I had experienced in an engagement. So this is the first case study on an IT service management project. Now, we had 200 high priority unresolved incidents when we did the post-implementation review of what was happening. They had only 3 problem records registered, and the service desk had large volume of calls. So there was something fundamentally a disaster, because on one hand you're just going after and after of a high priority incident, and only 3 problem records have been registered. So they were doing a lot of firefighting for a long period of time. And if you look at the key performance indicators, they only were about 50 to 60%. Obviously, the customers get irritated, they get annoyed, they say, what's happening? We are not able to see anything. There's a lot of broken links. And on top, what was important and startling was the resource utilization. The service desk staff were about 120% utilized. So just imagine if the service desk task was 120% utilized, they were actually burned out, right? And there's no morale, and people were just coming in, and there was no life. So we wanted to handle this and tackle this situation a little differently, because they had these ITIL processes. We wanted to do it differently. So how did we go about addressing the situation? The first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to do an assessment of the processes that were in place using ITIL as well as Cobit, right? Because if you look at this, ITIL only gives you a guidance, but it's when you start implementing IT service management, what happens is people tend to bypass processes. You need to also have some kind of a governance layer that oversees whether these processes are being followed diligently, right? So we wanted to do an assessment. So first, we wanted to review the service desk staff, because we were clear that they were 120% utilized, they were overstaffed. They were understaffed, they were losing morale, and we also talked with process owners in terms of incident problem, and also the key stakeholders, be it process owners, process managers, and so on and so forth. After looking at the assessment, we found that the processes were essentially in place, right? They had well-defined process collateral, roles and responsibility metrics, a service management tool that were in place, all in there. So principally, there was no problem. But they lacked IT governance, because there was no governance that this has to be followed in the appropriate way. The next one, what we did was, having understood that IT governance was not effective, we wanted to demonstrate value. And believe me, if you provide value for customers within a short period of time, they lose trust and you lose credibility. So it is very important to get some quick wins. So we decided to demonstrate value using Cobit 5.0. Now, when we talk about Cobit 5.0, we have a set of processes. There's a whole lot of. So we wanted to focus on 3 Cobit processes, which were aligned specifically on whatever they already had in terms of ITIL, and then come up with a benefit realization. Now, at the end of the day, you might do a lot of assessment, gap analysis, consulting, but you need to provide value, and that too with the executive council, which is investing a lot of amount of energy, people, resources to see, am I getting the real value, right? So we wanted to make sure that benefit realization was on the cards, and we wanted to report it to the executive council as part of executive management reporting. These are the high-level boxes that we went about approaching the situation, knowing the fact that they were actually struggling very badly. Now, as you know, in Cobit 5.0 processes, we have evaluate, direct, and monitor, align, plan, and organize, monitor, evaluate, and assess, deliver, service, and support. Now, as I told you, within the Cobit 5.0 processes, we wanted to focus on 3 specific processes that would actually make us a quick win and get the ball rolling. So under monitor, evaluate, and assess, we wanted to evaluate and assess the performance and conformance, right? So we're talking about, if you look at Cobit 5, the conformance aspect has been brought in to align with the regulatory and legal aspects. So it's important that as you deliver your services, it has to be complied, and of course, the performance has to meet expectations. So MEA1 was the first target that we wanted to have. The next one was to look at service requests and incidents. And if you look at ISO IC 20000 2011, there is a clear definition to define service requests and incidents, because we have seen a lot of people bucketed service requests as incidents because it's quite very easy to resolve, and the overall increasing of resolution rate goes much higher. So there has to be a clear definitions of what is a service request and incident that we want to focus upon with the customer, and also look at managing problems. As you saw, there were only 3 problem tickets raised where there were over 200 high priority incidents. So which means there was no proper root cause analysis that were conducted to minimize the number of high priority incidents. So if you look at what we did in terms of monitoring, evaluate, and assessing performance, we looked at performance monitoring using balanced scorecard, looking at dependency with third-party vendors, and of course, making sure these underpinning contracts and operational level agreements had a governance layer, right? And we did monitoring, reporting, and assessment to all what we did, right? In terms of managing service requests and incidents, we looked at revisiting the RACI metrics to see whether they were actually following the right way, the work instructions part, whether they were actually handling it appropriately in the service management tool, were they having appropriate workarounds in knowledge base, and we alerted the incident manager to be at 75%, so that they don't wait until the last moment before it gets allowed for service level agreements. Now, again, with managing problems, we divided into priority 1, 2, and 3. The yellow boxes that you see were priority 1. So we wanted to make sure there is a categorization of the problem, the prioritization of the problem ticket, and then we started with priority 2, which is basically ownership, making sure that resolution update goes to the knowledge base and the service desk is able to leverage those experiences before resolving incidents, and so on and so forth. So we actually divided into a structured priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3, and also priority 4, which is basically effectiveness of problem management. Now, once we did this in a structured manner, looking at these 3 processes and doing a structured approach, we did a performance review analysis. And if you look at this bar graph, the earlier one, the KPI part, the key performance indicator, raised from 55% to 82% in 3 months' time. And this is a problem that people have. People have a lot of wrong expectations. So we need to know that this is not a magic wand. It takes time because it takes people, it takes processes, it takes technology, partners, everybody to collaborate to make things happen. The customer satisfaction survey increased from 60% to about 80%. And then the service level agreements, which were about minus 35%, had a marginal improvement to about minus 9%, right? It did not go to 0, it did not improve, right? But it is important that we are able to reduce the SLA breaches, so which means there was a lot of control in place. The most significant advantage, or my key takeaway in the whole of this particular exercise, was the knowledge management usage moved from 0% to 57%. So instead of firefighting, they were looking at knowledge management resources. We instituted KM awards so that the best contributions were provided some awards, and accomplishments were recognized at a worldwide forum. So people saw value in terms of contributing to knowledge management that came out of that. So the red boxes are just with ITIL, and the green boxes is between ITIL and Cobit. So what are some of the lessons learned in this particular case, where we need to first understand what is their business requirement and what's their roadmap? Because if you don't understand the strategic business objectives that the organization is going, whatever framework, best practice framework or a standard would not still fit in. And we wanted to choose an appropriate framework that will fit in to address the specific need. So in this case, they were lacking IT governance. So we wanted to have Cobit, which has got that kind of governance mechanism to be enforcing, so that we will be able to realize value out of it. Now, whenever you look about compliance and other stuff, it's always recommended to have preventive controls, right? So before we think about something going wrong, we need to look at investing on preventive controls, and that's a fundamental aspect of all ISO standards. So we need to look at preventive measures, corrective actions, and preventive measures, right? And that is very important to do that. And we did the right expectation setting to say that it will take time, okay? So you need to give us time, and you need to focus and work with us as collaboratively to create the value, right? And as we have seen in a lot of these implementations, people are quite upbeat. They want to start everything all of a sudden. They go at big bang. So we started small and scale fast and grow fast. So the mechanism to go and to be sustainable, in my opinion, is to go start small, scale fast, and grow fast, right? The second case study that will be another interesting one is the customer had a demand for, bidding for business. So the business said that only when you are ISO IC 20000 certified, then we will probably, you are entitled to even submit an RFP, a request for proposal. So what is this? They came up and said, no, we don't mind what we want. We just want to go and get ISO IC 20000 as quickly as possible. Now, as I said, they did not have any basic processes in place, but they just get the documentation from various sources. The consultants came there, they just delivered it. They had all this set of 14 process documents, all beautifully plain, all tagged everything with banners, with process owners, and everything done. They had training, they had audit, and they got certified. Now, what was startling after a year, as you know, you have the surveillance audit, and also there is a recertification audit, right, after 3 years. Now, because they didn't do a proper structured approach to streamlining processes, doing training appropriately, understanding why we need to do, cascading that to the entire task force, sustenance was pretty difficult, right? You cannot just run processes just like that, just by having mere documents. They lost the certificate after the surveillance audit. Now, if you are already into this particular industry about ISO IC 20000 or 27000 or any standard, hardly people lose certifications. But if you lose certification, that means it's a fundamental disaster. So this also tells you how certain basic things were not in place and people were just going after, just want to gain some kind of an ISO certification that will help them win business. So just think about it. Just don't go and embrace something because you will be in business. You need to start small, scale fast, and then make sure it is sustainable. So what did we do? Why do we have? What is any use of these three together, right? So we had ITIL, Cobit, ISO IC 20000, which fits in well. Now, is there a straight answer? I don't think so. It purely depends of how you go about it. So what would be our prescriptive guidance for which is the best framework or standard to approach? So as I said, what are you trying to do? As an organization, what is your business objectives? What is your strategic goals? So normally these balanced scorecard is a best fit here. So you understand from a financial perspective, you understand from a customer perspective, you understand from operational efficiency perspective, and also the personal effectiveness, right? So we need to understand from all these 4 aspects of a balanced scorecard and see how are we going to be measured, right? You need to have measurable goals, and that's why Cobit 5 has got quite appealing, right from going from business goals to IT goals, from the IT goals to go to the IT processes, activities, and then go for that. So you have key goal indicators, and then you come from a key performance indicators. So it has to be a top-down approach of cascading, right from the business goals to the IT goals and then going on. And many a times I've seen this, that the projects or initiatives that are coming across, we need to know where is this project coming from? Who are the people who are getting involved in this? What is in for the customers? What is in from a business standpoint? So because there are a lot of stakeholders and each and every stakeholder has got some specific needs or requirements that needs to be fulfilled. So understanding the overall context of the project and initiative is very important to see which will fit in. And of course, everything comes with a cost. So it would be worthwhile to go with a business case to understand and do a cost benefit analysis before embarking on this. Is this something that will fit into my organizational needs? Is this some companies or organizations that have already benefited? There are enough amount of case studies and white papers that are presented where you can get a feel of understanding what's happening around in terms of cost, how is the benefit that the people have realized, and then what is the risk of doing it, right? Because every organization has got a certain level of enterprise risk appetite. So we need to be candid of the fact that how much can we take a risk in this particular journey. And one of the most aspects that I get little shocked is people always talk on IT terms, which the business hates, right? Please talk in terms of the business language, in terms of return on investment, in terms of productivity improvement, in terms of tangible benefits. So you need to align your IT with business. And at the end of the day, IT is need to provide business value. So that's something that you need to think on the perspective, right? Now, if you look at the way we have actually optimized, or if we have come there in the particular stuff, right? Some of the pitfalls that I see in embracing on best practices and framework and standards is that people don't get a top management buy-in. They just go there and then they just start working. Now, if you don't get the top management buy-in, it's going to be very difficult to sustain any initiatives. So you need to start from top and then make sure that it gets cascaded to the entire task force, right? Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with human emotions. So you need to bring them as part of the whole aspect before you do any kind of adoption, right? Now, any implementation of processes, best practice adoption has to be through phases, right? Because when you do in phases, like say phase one, I have so much things that I've done, and this is my benefits that I've got. And then I say, okay, if I have these benefits, I've realized that then we go into the next phase. So there is a closed loop between phase one and phase two. So people are able to see real value. Until people see value, there is no commitment from them. There's no participation from them. There's no support from them. So it is very important to understand and ensure that you treat these initiatives with phases, right? And not only that the top management or the senior executive committee understand the business objectives, but also the entire task force needs to be understood, which means you need to do campaigns, you need to do awareness sessions, you need to do some teasers, some quiz, and so on and so forth to make them aware what is your, let's say, FY14 roadmap. What is my strategic business objectives? Where are we in this particular era? And what do we want to achieve in the next 12 months, right? Now, when you do all these kind of initiatives and other stuff, the most important aspect that people fail to do is management of organizational change. I'm a strong proponent of management of organizational change within any organizations that we do. And if you see a lot of the practitioners that you will hear, they will have a lot of focus on management of organizational change. Now, when I mean management of organizational change, you need to run this as a kind of a change program, because you're talking about ABC, which is attitude, beliefs, culture as part of the whole organization. So the entire organization, right from the task force till to the senior management, will need to buy in with the fact, okay, guys, we know what we are doing. This is how we need to do about it. So in our engagements, what we do is we have a 100-day program. So just before the launch of a big launch, we make sure that we enter into the preparatory phase to do teasers, campaigns, one-to-one sessions, some quiz and dialogues in terms of interviews and other stuff, bring in people like change agents or change champions who could spearhead the initiatives with every business unit. Believe me, with any initiative to be successful, you need to have your own brand ambassadors. You need to have your own evangelist, but that has to come within. So they need to be sold of the fact that this is going to be helpful for them. And one thing you need to articulate in these kind of initiatives is what is in for me, what is in for the service desk agent, what is in for the problem manager, what is in for the quality analyst, what is in for the service manager, what is in for the customer. So once you start clearly articulating what is in for them, then what happens is it becomes a very easy buy-in. Because I've seen when there are new processes, new tools and other stuff, people get a lot more panic. They don't know whether they will lose jobs, and with workforce reductions at the order of the day being very competitive and other stuff, people are increasingly alarmed whether they will be able to retain those jobs. So it is very important to understand their human emotions, talk with them, and make them feel at ease. It's not an easy job because people will go with denial, they'll go with resistance, they'll go with frustration. So you'll have all kind of people in terms of the change curve, right? So we need to be cognizant of the fact that we will have different people with different emotional zones, and we need to be candid of the fact to give the right approach to fit in to clarify their doubts and queries, right? And expectation management, right? Now, people have unrealistic expectations. Now, if I have ITIL, if I implement IT service management, if I have ISO 20000 or 27001 or 38500, my organization will be great. I will become one of the Fortune 500 companies. Now, we need to be very clear in expectations, right? Every company, every organization is going on a continual service improvement journey, right? It keeps on improving, making sure that improves year over year in various aspects, right? And making a holistic way of looking at things. Now, if we want to look at that particular stuff, we need to make sure that you have the expectation management rightly set. And please focus on first on easier changes, because again, if you look at any kind of IT service management initiatives, you need to provide a quick, visible, tangible benefit, right? So focus on easier change and enable quick wins, and make sure that you take one step at a time, right? So that will enable you to do, in principle, a lot more things. Now, I have almost done that, but what I essentially want to cover here is you need to make sure that every time you follow a best practice or a framework, just think about it. Is that really necessary? What are the organizations and companies that have actually implemented this? Is this the right way that will fit into me? And do a stepwise approach and take a meaningful involvement into the whole episode onto that. Yeah. So I have a lot of articles written there, so you can have a look at it in ISACA Journal as well as in ITSM portal and so on. You can follow me on Twitter at Suresh GP and LinkedIn. And if you are in SITS14 at London, we can definitely meet. I'm there. I'm also there in ITSM of New Zealand conference. So if you are attending in Wellington, I'd be more than happy to catch up with you. And let me see if you have any other questions in the question zone, and open it up if there are any questions, if you want to listen, and I can take up any questions if you have. Yeah, if there is no other questions, I would thank you for your valuable time today. I hope you had some takeaways, and I look forward to hearing from you about your feedback and your experience in implementing the best practice framework and standard adoption. I hope you you had some key takeaways that could make you take some pragmatic decisions without complicating on best practice frameworks and standards adoption. Have a good day, and talk to you again later. Thank you.